is about.
Reverend Fathers, Mr. Chairman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. The question often asked is, who are we? Where did we come from? Why does the name Kingdom of Kerry, where does that come from? Our story begins 1,500 years ago, when 1,500 BC, when a mighty Milesian army swept into Kenmare Bay, and they moved northwards and they challenged the rulers of the country, the Tuatha De Danann, and they defeated them in a great battle on the plains of Royal Meath. And it was the Milesians who became the founding fathers of the mighty Celtic kingdom of Erin. And many of you here today are descended from the Milesians, while more of you are descended from the Norman lords. Now if we move on to 800 AD, a very powerful lady, Queen Maeve of Connaught, sent one of her triplet sons down here to this part of the country to claim his inheritance, and his name was Keir. And he founded a small kingdom, and the boundaries were from the mountains of Slieve-Lucra to Tarbert, and from Tralee to the mouth of the Shannon. And from that small kingdom of Keir grew today's kingdom of Kerry. Now the next people who invaded us, of course, were the Vikings, and they created mass destruction in the country. And one of the great Irish leaders, the O'Connor Kerry, challenged them on many occasions and defeated them in many great battles. When Brian Boru decided to have the great battle at Clontarf in 1014, he asked the Munster chiefs to join him in battle. And it was Beardán O'Connacour of Doon Ballybunion, along with a whole load of people who marched to Clontarf and they defeated the Danes. But the sad part about it is that most of the Munster chiefs died at Clontarf. The next people that swept in 1169, they came into Ireland, but they didn't come to Kerry until 1177, were the Norman lords. And of course we have evidence today of the Fitzmaurices, the old court at Lixnaw, and they brought in the foreign orders of monks, and I don't think that the Irish monks at the time were too happy about it, but nevertheless they set up the great abbeys and the great monasteries. Now after that we had Henry VIII, we had Cromwell, and we had Elizabeth II. We had the great famine of 1840 with great loss of life to all peoples of Ireland and indeed of Kerry. And then we had the penal days, and we had the landlords, and we had the landwards. Yet in spite of the great disasters and the warlords who set out to destroy us, our forefathers defied them even unto death. It was these noble people, and many of them lie here reposing today, who ensured that we would be free, and who kept the fires of faith and freedom burning bright across the centuries in spite of dungeon, fire and sword. The fires of faith they allowed no man or no nation to extinguish. Our ancient literature and historical tradition have ensured Ireland an eminent place and one of singular distinction among the nations of Europe. Now if you look at Europe today, and we often turn on our televisions and we hear these great intellectuals from other European countries telling us what we can do and what we can't do and what we should do and what we shouldn't do, they know nothing about our history. When the barbarians overran the Roman Empire, they burned and they looted and they destroyed the great abbeys, the monasteries, the libraries, and they left Europe in ashes. And from the 6th to the 9th centuries, it was Irish monks and sages and scholars who recopied the great manuscripts, who opened the great monasteries across Europe, and they were given the distinct title of Insula Sanctorum et Dictorum, the island of saints and scholars. And they richly deserved that title. Now, the Irish race have been described as both fierce and gentle, like the high blood of the brave, soft, winning and tender as the first smile of love, free and brilliant, terrible in their strength, unmatched in their beauty and creativity, intense in their sorrow, and reckless and childlike in their joy. Today we stand here on the sacred side of Kilfeighny, and we see the precious Christian relic of St. Fiacna's Church. O'Donovan wrote in 1841 that this church was in ruins. And if you look at the failure or festology of Angus Cayley Day, in the calendar of Irish saints, there's 2 feast days given for this saint as March the 30th and April the 29th. So you have 2 dates now that you can honour this saint, March the 30th and April the 29th. Now around the graveyard repose the people who lived in an age when man's conscience was his crown. They were determined that we would never be strangers in our own land, and their likes will never be seen again. Now, our great national treasures, when we think of our great national treasures, we think of museums and other buildings, but our great national treasures are here with us today, and they are our children. They stand before us today in all the golden freshness of a new generation, and they are our future. Now, sometimes the youth get very hard pressed, and they're criticised for a lot of things. But if you look at all the world wars and all the great atrocities that have been committed by humanity against humanity, no young people were ever involved in those atrocities. They were all adults. So always bear that in mind. Now I'd like to thank Bill and his group, and I see Father Morris down there, the jewel in your crown, a man I admire tremendously, and you're very lucky to have somebody like Father Morris. And I see Father O'Connor there, and we were absolutely very lucky to have somebody like Father O'Connor. And I thank you once again, and I thank you for